Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Connie, a full-time furniture painter, and today I'm going to be painting one of my favourite styles to paint, and that is an industrial inspired piece. So before I get stuck in with the painting, I've got some very interesting information for you. So this involves these specific colours right here, plus a couple more that I don't actually have. So you might be thinking, what do all those colours have in common? Well, I'm going to tell you that right now, and if you follow me on other social media platforms, you already know this information. I'm going to tell you again anyway. So these colours are all shades that have been retired from Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint range in the last few years. However, they're back out of retirement with a bang. So you've only been able to get them until recently in this size pot, which is a 4-ounce tub, and that's a tester size, which is a very generous tester size. You could do a small project with that quite easily, but if you wanted to do something bigger, you'd need a few, and it's not ideal, but not anymore. They are back in all the sizes, 4, 8, 16 and 32 ounce. So to celebrate these colours coming out of retirement, I'm going to be painting some of them, not all of them because that'd be a bit mad. I'm going to be using some of them on this piece behind. Also, just before we get stuck in, my kids are on their 6-week summer holiday from school. They're at home, they're very excitable, very loud. So for that reason, I'm going to be doing the majority of this video with a voiceover. The first thing we need to do is create some texture on the surface of this piece. It's a modern piece. I pick these pieces up quite often because they do make really good painting projects. So the way that I'm going to add texture to this is by adding a powder called sea spray. You can create lots and lots of different effects with sea spray, and I'm going to mix it directly into my paint in a bowl. And the first colour that I'm going to use is Apricot, which is not something that you'd perhaps associate with an industrial style, but obviously bear with us because this is just the first layer. And then I'm going to stipple it on, which just means pouncing your paintbrush on the surface as opposed to a traditional way of brushing it on. This is going to create lots of little peaks in the paint, and the sea spray helps retain those peaks, so it gives a gritty, textured kind of effect. And what I like to do is work in small areas, and then before it's had chance to completely dry, just kind of go over it and kind of mess it around a little bit, because you don't want the texture to look too uniform and samey. You want it to look random. You want it to look like old paint that's kind of been layered up over time. The next colour that I'm going to use is this shade called Dixie Belle Blue. Now, it is important to note that all of these are touch dry before I move on to the next section. Otherwise, they're going to melt together and kind of create weird colours, which is not the kind of look I'm going for. So the first coat was completely dry. Well, I say it was completely dry. It was touch dry. This is the next one that I'm going on. And as you can see, I'm just putting it on in certain areas. Literally just patches. It's kind of random. I'll fast forward this bit for you so you can see the placement of this, and really it depends on how much of that colour you want to see, as it kind of dictates how much you put on. So if you only wanted to see a little bit of blue, I'd only be putting a little bit on. But you can't really go wrong with this technique. It is really kind of quite freeing and a creative way to paint. So I'm just whacking that on in areas. The next colour goes on when the blue is dry, and that is Florida Orange. So this colour is of quite a bright shade. The other two, not so much. Again, just applying it quite randomly in areas. Some areas I'm overlapping the blue, some areas I'm not. And you'll notice as well that I am kind of wisping it out at the edges. I don't think that's an official phrase, but you kind of get the drift. I'm not leaving it all in a big blob. I'm kind of, you know, sort of blending the edges out so that it's not just sat in one kind of blob on the surface, if that makes sense. So the final colour and the main colour that you're going to see is this colour. It's Holy Guacamole. Avocado green is making a big comeback, so I'm super pleased this is back in all the sizes and back out of retirement. So I do want pretty much full coverage with this. However, I am going to be distressing this to reveal the other colours underneath. So I'm just applying it very, very roughly. You will be seeing little bits of the orange and the blue and the apricot peeking through. in between. So I am not going for full coverage of this, although this is the predominant colour that you will be seeing. I'm sort of dry brushing it on almost in areas. To do that, I'm using pretty much every single brush that I've used for this entire thing have been premium chip brushes. They work really well for texture and effects, and also for dry brushing as well. They've got kind of a more scratchy texture, and they don't want to kind of make the paint lie flat and smooth. So the final thing I'm going to do, and this is straight after I'd applied the Holy Guacamole, so still a little bit wet in areas, but I'm going to play with that a little bit, and I'm going to apply Collard Greens. Now, Collard Greens is not a retired shade. It's a shade that I use very often. It's very popular, and I'm going to use it for kind of just creating a little bit of shade in areas, certain areas only. The reason it works so well with Holy Guacamole is because they're both olive toned, so they both are kind of have the same undertones, although one is obviously Collard Greens is a lot darker, but that's why it works so well to create shade with Holy Guacamole. So I'm using a tiny amount of water, tiny, and that's not really to get them to blend together. That's more to kind of dilute the Collard Greens so that it's not so full coverage. So I'm just using, again, premium chip brush to add the shading, mainly in the drawers, but a little bit elsewhere as well. Basically anywhere that you want to create a shadow and a little bit of drama. So the last thing to do is distress it. Now, I'm using a carbide scraper, and my paint has probably been dry, I don't know, maybe an hour, because it's going to be easier to distress. If you leave it to dry overnight, your paint is going to harden. The longer you leave it, the harder it's going to be to distress. And Dixie Belle chalk paint is actually very durable. So if you've tried distressing it after you've left it for a couple of days, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's why I'm doing it sooner rather than later. Also, the sea spray is still a kind of crumbly texture. That first layer that I applied with the Apricot, still a little bit crumbly, so it gives you a really interesting effect when you kind of scrape it away. Just be super careful when you are scraping it away, if you do it fairly quickly, because obviously you could scrape directly back to the bare wood, which we don't want. I'm also using a sanding sponge as well, just to kind of soften any areas. And then no project like this would be complete without any kind of dark wax or wax effect, and you know how much I enjoy doing that. So I'm first laying down a coat of clear wax. That's just going to help me control where my brown wax goes, and also let me kind of pull areas back if I need to. I just buff the clear wax back with a rag just to remove any excess, and then I'm using a very small amount of brown wax on my brush. Again, premium chip brush, works really well to add waxes, and I'm just starting to layer it up. You can layer coloured waxes, so it's better to go in with a small amount and then add a second coat if you want to, and just gradually layer it up in kind of thin layers, as opposed to going in super thick and regretting it. So that is pretty much it. That's just going to emphasize the shading around the edges that I added with Collard Greens. And this is a couple of close-ups of the finished look. A super quick video today, because I have done this technique before with other colours, but I just wanted to show you this colour variation. It can be done lots of different colours, but I just wanted to show you these particular colours because obviously they are now back out of retirement. Thank you for tuning in and watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. It's just started absolutely chucking it down with rain here, if you can hear that in the background. So very atmospheric and moody, which was perfect for staging the photos. Make sure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.